Welcome to Navigating a Broken Vessel. I'm Dave Harris, and I want to welcome you to this episode where we're going to talk about postpartum depression. And I have a special guest with me. I want to welcome Eric Dyches. Welcome, Eric.
Pleasure to be here.
Glad to have you here. Now, Eric, maybe 10, 12 years ago, there was some events that took place in your life. I want to talk about some things maybe leading up to that. Tell me a little story about your family, your marriage, things like that, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for raising awareness on this important topic, and I'm happy to share my story. As you mentioned, so it's been just over 10 years that my wife, Emily, my late wife, Emily, she had a little baby. She was 38 years old and had a baby, and we'd been married for 17 years, and this baby was our fifth baby, and she'd had four other babies. And after she had this child, she, suffered with postpartum anxiety. And prior to that, she hadn't had any signs. And I was actually surprised. She was actually diagnosed with postpartum depression at the time. And for me, I was just scratching my head, just wondering, it doesn't really reconcile or square with the fact that she doesn't seem like a depressed person, but that's nonetheless what the diagnosis was. And so at any rate, she suffered for a while, and we did our very best to get her treatment. And it was something that was we were not accustomed to because she hadn't suffered before. So we kind of muddled through it and did our best to find some treatment for her.
So in terms of when you say she hadn't suffered with it before, I'm assuming no signs of depression in general, and then also she's had four children, no signs of postpartum depression. Is that fair to say?
I would say she, like every mom, she had some baby blues after each baby, just the chemical makeup and what changes after you deliver a child and the hormones, how things adjust. So I think with the other baby, she definitely experienced baby blues, but nothing to this level. And I would say throughout her life, she hadn't had any clinical depression or anxiety that I was familiar with. And I'd known her, I grew up with her, and we'd known each other from pretty much birth. And so it was a situation that I was not accustomed to. I wasn't used to seeing her with that heightened of anxiety and panic and worry about many things that you and I just wouldn't worry about. These were things that became very elevated in this state.
So they call it postpartum depression, but it could also include anxiety. It can include some of these other things.
Yeah, I'll leave that to the professionals. But yeah, I think we kind of lump that in, or at least we have for years. And now it's starting to expand. And I know that there's some, very specific terminology and diagnoses around this. But at the time, it was lumped into postpartum depression, but it manifests in a lot of different ways.
Understood. And I definitely want to, at this point, talk about how the fact that you and I both are not professionals, and we definitely recommend that you find help. And in fact, you're going to be talking about ways that people can find help as well as we continue on today. But definitely advice from a podcast should help people to know that there are resources out there and things that they might be suffering with, but definitely consult a professional.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that very much. So tell me, with this situation, the fifth child then, what happened?
So with the fifth child, she was 38. So she was a little bit older in having a baby. And so during the delivery of the child, there were some complications. And at the time, the doctor and those that were delivering the child, they thought she was having an amniotic embolism. And so that's an experience that you don't want to have. I didn't know that's what was happening at the time, but I just know there was complications. They shuttled all of us, my mother-in-law, my daughter, me, we were all in the room, and I could sense something was not right. And so whatever happened with the delivery, there were complications, and I was very nervous, and I could sense and see in Emily's eyes that she was very nervous. So in short, it was a traumatic birth, a traumatic delivery, a very traumatic experience for Emily. So I point back to that as something that potentially could have contributed to the fact that when she got home, she had this heightened level of anxiety. I don't know for sure. And some of these, mental health can be very nuanced and challenging to kind of point your finger at the reasons behind. But I can tell you that was one thing that I can point to and say, yeah, that could have potentially contributed to it. So she had this traumatic delivery. She comes home, and after a few days, I could sense that she was very different in the things that she worried about. And so the anxiety was heightened. Before she was very calm, she was very poised and didn't worry. She was definitely not a worrier. And then when she got home, little things would set her off, and she would get very anxious and worried. And for me, I was confused because I thought this should be a really happy time. Um, Most of the rest of our life was stable. We had health insurance. We had a really nice place to live. I had a stable job. We had exceptional support from our extended family. We had great neighbors. And so for me, the person who was not suffering with this, I was just scratching my head wondering why she was feeling so worried and so unhappy about the situation. But come to find out through visiting with the professional, she was suffering with this postpartum mood disorder.
So it was something that you could tell, something is enough that we need to go talk to some professionals.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. There was something off. And I remember the first few times she would just go visit with her OB alone. And in hindsight, I wish I would have gone with her initially. Now, when it got to the point that it felt like we weren't making progress, then I started to go on the visits with her. So yeah, she talked to her OB, and bless them all for doing everything they possibly could. Um, and it got to the point that we probably had exhausted the resources there. So this office, they made a warm handoff and a warm referral to a psychiatrist who was in a local hospital. We met with the psychiatrist, and he was very helpful in kind of treating and helping and guiding and directing us through the process. So
Is it one of those things like, I mean, you and I are both male. We will never suffer from postpartum anything. There's no postpartum for us. Is it something you feel comfortable speaking about from an observational standpoint, even though, it's something you don't experience, if that makes sense?
yeah, I think it's, you know, I I don't find myself as an expert. I'm just a guy with a story. And when Emily passed away, I would spend time thinking. And in pretty short order, I realized I need to share her story. I want to share her story because I felt ill equipped in treating her. And I didn't want that to be the case for others. So I am not fully qualified to be talking on this subject, other than the fact that I'm extremely passionate. I have a story to share. I'm not afraid to share the story. I feel like after Emily had kind of gone through some of her challenges, she told me directly, she said, I'm going to own this. I'm going to share this with other people. I'm not going to be embarrassed, and I'm not going to be bashful about sharing it. So I feel like she gave me approval to kind of talk and raise awareness. And I feel like we've made some good progress and done some things, but you're absolutely right. I'm a bit bashful myself in sitting in front of a microphone talking like an authority on this subject, but passion moves things forward. And I can tell you, grief and trauma have done things to me that just a simple desire has not been able to do. So I experienced seeing Emily go through some really difficult times, and then obviously she passed away, which caused a lot of just passion inside my heart to say I'm going to raise this. I'm going to show her picture. I'm going to share the story with people, and I'm going to let them know that um, we're going to do something about it.
That sounds great. You say she passed away. She passed away as a result of this situation. Is that
Yeah, she did, and it's not something I like to dwell on. I prefer dwelling on her life and who she was. She was a phenomenal pianist. She was a great mother. She was a tremendous neighbor and friend. She was just an amazing daughter and sister and wife. And so all those things she was great in every way, but she was also flawed, and she wasn't perfect, and her house wasn't always picked up. And, you know, she just was just a normal person. But yeah, this sickness ended up taking her life. She ultimately was in an auto pedestrian accident that took her life. But we try to focus more on kind of the goodness that she had when she was living, and that legacy that she's left.
it's kind of hard because she can't speak for herself. And so I think it's awesome that she has an advocate, not only in you for her, but also for the situation, which I think is awesome. For me, it's like, I love hearing that she's just a normal person. Sometimes, we listen to a recording, we watch something on television, and we don't really get an opportunity to know that person really well. And I love it because I think about my own life. I'm like, man, my house is not perfect, and I wish I had this that was cleaner, and I wish that maybe a better car or whatever. And it's like, you know what? We all have these things we're struggling with, and that's what makes us normal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it can be a way for us to connect. You know, one of the things I want to do is share this story so somebody can connect to this story, and maybe it changes perspectives or changes behaviors or changes how somebody goes about addressing a situation. And so, yeah, she was normal in so many ways. She obviously was phenomenal to us, to me, my kids, her family, and we miss her greatly, obviously. But we've wanted to share her legacy with other people to know that she was normal. She didn't bring this on herself. Mothers don't bring this on themselves. They don't choose to be sick in this way. Um, and at the time, there probably weren't the resources that we have today. And so we just want to raise the awareness so people understand that there is hope.
Awesome. Tell me, obviously, there's grief involved. How did you and your children and other members of your family, friends, and so forth, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm still processing it. The grieving process never ends. The healing process never ends, and I don't want it to end. It keeps me attached to who she is and who I am and who I want to be and my family and relationships now. So it's a process and it's going to be a lifelong process. It took it took a lot of time and energy and effort and people around me to help kind of process the situation and we continue to do so. I would say my children are very resilient. We hear that quite a bit, but it's true. They have been able to move forward in life. They can reverence her memory and reverence her life and continue to have joy. There is joy after really difficult things in life, and I've been able to experience that. But my parents were great, my siblings were great, my in-laws were great, the neighbors around me. If I sit here long enough, I mean, I could have a whole laundry list of things that people did for me to kind of help me through the grieving process. And if I sat here and talked about those individually by name, the tears would run down my face because there was, so many people that when you have a mother of an 11-month-old that passes away, that's very touching. And so I had so much help and was able to just kind of decide to put one foot in front of the other and take a day at a time. Just all of those kind of trite things that we say, but that's what I've had to do. And I read something early on, and this writer said, eventually you have to take the tissue boxes and you have to go put them up on the shelf and you have to decide to kind of move forward. And so once I had decided that I kind of, I could reverence her, I could love her, but I could continue to heal and move forward rather than just move on from this situation like it was a problem. No, I was going to move forward. I had 5 children I need to take care of. And so it's a process that continues. Healing never ends.
Yeah, I love that. And you've been remarried since then. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is fair to say. I'm married now, and my living wife, her name is Leslie, and she's phenomenal. And we met because her spouse had passed away, my spouse had passed away, and they both suffered with mental illness, and that's what took their lives. And so we had this connection, and we became friends, and we were both in this healing process. And as we became friends, it obviously progressed to the point that we felt like we wanted to blend our families. I had 5 children at the time. She had 3 children. We decided to get married and blend the families. And I can tell you, in terms of healing and processing all of this, aside from my faith, Leslie has by far been the best thing for me to help heal and process, and kind of incorporate this whole experience into my life because she had done it. She had done it previous to me, and so it was just a testament that it could be done, and she had kind of the playbook, and she shared that with me.
Awesome. And as far as the two of you now handling both sets of children and grief and memory and things like that, how did that work?
Well, it's a complicated process, and we've been doing this for about 10 years now, and, it's better today for everybody involved than it was 8, 9 10 years ago, and I think our kids would say that. I heard early on someone said, I went to a conference on blending families, and they said, "This is not a smoothie, it's a tossed salad." And so that's what we have tried to incorporate with our family. The challenge is when you start blending a family, you change identities. So the oldest is now may not be the oldest, the youngest may not now be the youngest, and so you're changing all these identities. And that has been a difficult process for me to learn because I was so ill-equipped to kind of manage through that. But it's not been for the faint of heart for us or our children to blend a family. But I can tell you we've been very blessed to get to the point now that I would say we all get along. We love to spend time with each other. We try not to refer to each other as a step parent or a step sibling, or I'm their parent. My biological kids don't call me their dad, but they call me their parent, and vice versa for Leslie. Although the little guy, he does call Leslie mom, and she's taken on that role.
That's awesome. And is it an interesting dynamic where the children have all experienced a traumatic experience in losing a parent? Is that something that brings the family closer together?
I would say absolutely it does bring them closer together because they can understand. There's a shared understanding there that I'm going to say it, and it's going to be bold, that their late parent was not crazy. And so I think we all within our family share that desire that no one would look at Emily or Leslie's late husband, Chad, as being crazy because they weren't. They were so much more than that. So I think as our children, they've been able to reverence both lives and both really difficult, traumatic passings and help each other and love each other and bless each other. So it's it's been one of those things that we feel it's been a miracle, and our faith has kind of led us that. And there's plenty of stories in ancient scripture that kind of lead us to think that there's been divinity involved with this.
I have no doubt. I've seen many times where the greatest of trials become the greatest of blessings. I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in the lives of so many people. It's how we respond to those trials, I think, isn't it? Isn't that what it is? It's how we respond.
Yeah, I think you're right. I remember going through this process in my own mind and heart and just deciding, was the faith that I had believed in and spent a lifetime kind of building around, was that really true? And am I going to continue to attach to that or not attach to that? And what I concluded was faith is a choice, right? It's not an abstract concept. At the end of the day, it's a choice that leads to some power in your life. And that's what I believed. And so I decided to kind of lean into that concept and choose faith and choose hope and choose moving forward. And it's not been perfect. It's been very difficult, honestly. And there's times in the past 10 years I definitely don't want to relive, but there's been so much grace and mercy and compassion from our family, our immediate family members, our extended family members, those around us, Leslie to me to Leslie. It's just been drenched in so much mercy and compassion, while being extremely difficult. Your comment about hard things become some of the most kind of insightful or blessed things in our lives. It's absolutely true. I have to be careful saying that because it might sound like that I wished or hoped or was grateful that Emily had this experience. Absolutely not. I would not wish this on anybody. But the fact of the matter is, really difficult things happen to people in this life, not of their choosing. But when it does happen, you can take the opportunity to take stock and say, okay, where do I go from here? These are my options. And it's not going to be easy, and it's always not kind of a clear path forward. But the way I've done it is you take a step and then you observe, and then you take another step and you observe. And I call it the dotted line effect. If I keep stepping forward, it feels good. It feels like there's a dotted line in front of me. I keep just stepping forward. Doesn't mean I'm perfect at it. Doesn't mean I don't need to step away and pivot, because I've done plenty of that. But if you move forward, the worst thing is you just get stagnant and you kind of quit. And I just learned I couldn't quit. I had to move forward.
So it's like moving forward, not moving on.
Yeah,
Is that right?
exactly. Yep. Yep.
Awesome. That's yeah, because that moving on makes it feel like you've left something behind.
Yeah.
And it's not that at all. It's moving forward, knowing that the experiences you've had in your life, the relationships that you've had, have made not only you who you are, but your children who they are, other family members, and frankly, it's something never to be forgotten.
I completely agree. I wonder sometimes. So I've spent a lot of time, and I have a note on my iPhone about healing. And whenever I hear something really interesting about healing, I pop it in there. I heard once, someone had a very difficult thing happen in their life, and they said, "I will never heal from this." And I was shocked. I just thought, why would you not want to at least strive to heal at some level from this? Now, healing for me, as you mentioned, is not moving on from something. I want to continue to be attached to Emily, just like Leslie wants to be attached to Chad. We're not going to move on from them, but we can move forward in a healthy manner. Our children deserve to have a healthy life, and we're going to try to give them as healthy a life as possible. The healing process, as I mentioned earlier, it's not going to end. It's going to continue. And I'm going to integrate this new life, the old life, into my new life, and make a life that is beneficial. It's beneficial to those around me. It's beneficial to those that I can potentially help or share the story with. But I don't want to get to the point that I forget about this. I want to reverence the story, and I want to reverence the relationship as I continue to heal and innovate and adjust and pivot and just become a more integrated person with the experiences that I've had.
Have you found that it has helped you to understand human suffering, empathy more as well? Talk more about
Yeah,
that.
that's a great concept. It's a great concept. And as I think about that question, I'm going to say something that I'm a little ashamed of, but I'm going to say it anyway. Before the experience of Emily, I used to go to, I'll just say it, KSL.com, and I would read stories about car wrecks or really challenging things in life that were quite traumatic. And I don't want to say I was reading them for entertainment, but it was almost like this shock value. Like, I need more details of this kind of stuff. Not because I was like a morbid person, but it was just like, wow, wow, I can't believe this is happening. But now, after having this, I rarely go to KSL and read stories like that. If I see a story like that, a traumatic car accident, an airplane crash, a drowning, a young person passing away, stuff like that, I honestly I have to keep an arm's length from that, because my heart is such that when I hear those types of stories, I know the feelings behind it. I know the sleepless nights. I know the pain that comes from losing a parent. I've seen my kids go through that. I know the pain of losing a spouse. I know the pain associated with grief and loneliness. I didn't know loneliness existed until after Emily passed away at that level. So I think, to your question, I'm very more compassionate, much more compassionate about people that have tragedy take place in their life. And I have to stay a little bit distanced from it because it touches my heart so deeply, because I know the details. Whereas before I didn't know, I would just be like, "Oh, that's really unfortunate that that happened." And then I would just move on to my petty life. And now I see something, and if there's something tragic happen, I just think, "Wow, they have a hard road ahead of them, and they're they've got some difficulties." And I know what some of those difficulties feel like. So yeah, my heart is different than it used to be.
I love that. It's funny. I was talking to my therapist. I see my therapist once a week. Yep. Obviously, I've got mental health challenges. I was talking to him about how it's the same kind of thing you're talking about. I'll be watching a news story and just almost want to cry. It's almost like, wow, I myself, I mean, my dad passed away, fell off a ladder. I wasn't there, so it wasn't, it sucks, but it's not like I was there, involved in that traumatic experience. But it still is crappy, and I can tell you that even with all those things, you feel that empathy for other people, and I think it's that kindness that it just it gives you the desire to help other people as much as you can. I love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
Well, I think that's why Leslie and I became such good friends so quickly, is because she had that same deep empathy, and then we could share that empathy together. And now we try to reach out to people the best we can. I mean, we're limited in time and energy and resources, but we try to reach out within our community if someone's suffering, and just try to give them a shoulder to cry on, to give them a little bit of support, help them know that there is hope. And I think that's one of the things that I would want to get out of this is, although it's not been perfect, I'm not perfect. My life's not perfect. There's been challenges. My children, they could sit and tell you all the struggles that we had over the past 10 years, but I can tell you we've experienced deep levels of joy, even in the midst of the challenges that we experienced in the passing of a spouse and a parent. There is hope even after really difficult things happen in your life.
It really reminds me, and I have no problem talking about what the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has said, that your I want to make sure I get it close because I don't have the quote perfect, but it's essentially that your joy in life has nothing to do with the circumstances of your life, but the focus of your life. And I think that that's, focused on Jesus Christ, but also focused on helping other people, helping to raise people out of the things that are hard for them. I think that's part of that.
Yeah, I think you feel that, right? When you help someone, you feel it inside. I mean, I think it was Abe Lincoln that said, "When I do good, I feel good." And there's just something that says there's a greater power, there's a greater purpose to all of this. And I've definitely sensed that after having this experience and losing a spouse at a young age, and then blending a family. And there's so much more to life than I think the superficiality that sometimes we kind of experience in this life. And it's ongoing, and I'm continually trying to kind of integrate what I'm learning through this life. And that's one of the reasons I'm here, is to just try to share and just learn together.
So tell me what you've done some specific things. There's a foundation and other things. Talk about what you've done since this took place a
Yeah,
night ago.
happy to share that. So grief is one of the greatest motivators in life. I found that out. And after Emily passed away, I knew, as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to share the story. I wanted to tell people about this. At the time when she was sick, I felt like it was so isolated, that we were the only ones and there weren't answers. And I felt like the system wasn't serving us well. And we had good insurance and exceptional support with our community and family. But yet I felt so alone, and there weren't resources. And I don't blame any one person or any, I just blame the system generally. It felt like it was not adequate to take care of us at the time. And what I can say is there's been dramatic improvements in the state of Utah over the past 10 years. And it's humbling to sit back and see kind of some of the things that have changed. And a mother that delivers today is going to have a very different experience than a mother delivered in 2015 or 2016. So you mentioned the foundation. So after Emily passed away, I knew I wanted to raise awareness. Wasn't sure how to do that. We started a foundation. We worked with her family and friends and my family, and we just decided we wanted to come up with something. So we came up with the Emily Effect. And so we focused on that, and the goal was to raise awareness and to give other women a voice to share. So there's a section on the website that has women sharing their stories, and we just raised awareness. We just put her picture out there and said, "Hey, y- nobody's immune." I think the numbers are 1 in 5, and so it's a pretty large number. And we're going to have 50,000 babies born in Utah. So there's big numbers that people, women, potentially mothers, could suffer from this. And so we wanted to raise awareness. We started the foundation. So we shared it widely, and I helped run that for about 5 years. And since Emily's sister Megan runs that foundation and keeps the website up and does events and different things. And so that was a healing process to go through. Um, my desire to improve resources was kind of the next step. So the first step was raise awareness, which we did through the Emily Effect. The next thing was improve resources. So I partnered with an individual, a therapist locally. She's a pioneer in the state of Utah. Her name is Lindsay Proctor. She had started a program for moms specifically. She reached out, we connected, had a conversation. And then ultimately I knew in my heart that I wanted to be involved as some sort of a clinic or something that I could refer moms to, because I was getting calls. People were calling me, "Hey, what do we do?" I would send them to the Emily Effect website, but it felt like it wasn't fully complete. So I partnered with Lindsay Proctor, and she had already founded a clinic called Serenity, a healing center for mothers, for moms. And we have a location in Draper and Provo. So when somebody calls me, I have a place to send them. I give them a phone number. We get them in quickly. We're able to see them. It's a general outpatient therapy and an intensive outpatient program. So that has really made a difference in at least my own resource, that if somebody calls me, I can send them there.
So tell me what's the web address of?
The web address is serenityrw.com. Serenityrw.com.
Perfect. Yeah, and I always tell people, I mean, we're not sponsored. There's no exchange of money or anything like that. I just want to make sure that people know there are resources out
Yeah.
there. Right? That's the point.
I have another one, if you don't mind me sharing. So the next iteration, so it's kind of crazy. I talk about grief and how it's a great motivator. And the other thing that happens is when you have something really traumatic happen, and people could say, well, it's kind of embarrassing for your family. And I've kind of done the opposite thing. I've just embraced it. This has happened and I'm going to own it. And I felt like Emily allowed me to kind of share the story. The next iteration in my healing process and trying to improve resources is I've recently started a clinic with my sister, who's a nurse practitioner. She's actually the sister that was there when two of our children were born. So she was a nurse in the mother baby. And so anyway, she has a extreme passion for women's health. And as do I. By default, I was dragged into this conversation. I'm not a full expert. I'm just a guy with a story that has some passion. And so my sister and I, we've come together and we started a clinic, and we do see men and women, but primarily we're focused on women's health. And it's less on the postpartum period and it's more on the perimenopause, menopause. I feel like that women's health generally and women's mental health is an underserved market, and we need to be more focused on treating women. You mentioned earlier, men were different than women, and it's taking me, the 49 years of my life to understand how different we are. We're different in amazing ways. We have different roles and responsibilities, and that's a beautiful thing. But the biological, the physiological makeup, the chemicals that run through us and how they pump through us on the cycle basis are very different. And we need to treat them differently. So it's gone from the Emily Effect, still involved with Serenity, and now we have what's called RE Medical Utah. It's a clinic focused on hormone replacement therapy and other women's health items. And I say that because women, it's more complicated than men, and we should be treating women at a higher level.
Awesome. And RE as in the letters RE?
AURI, AURI Medical Utah.com.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. So tell me, what do you hope that people get out of you telling your story?
Yeah, it's a great question. And like I said, I haven't done a podcast for quite some time. I've kind of sat on the sidelines a little bit and let this process. So I appreciate you offering to share the story again, because I think there is a need to share our personal experiences. It's one thing to read about it, kind of in a clinical setting, but when somebody attaches the emotion of the story and then you put a face to this, I think there's just some real power associated with that. I was hesitant to do it in the beginning because I thought, what if I share this and moms say, that's why I don't want to get pregnant. I'm not going to get pregnant and I'm not going to have any babies because I don't want to have that happen to me. And that was a worry for me. And I've had to accept the fact that there might be people like that. But I want to follow up with that saying there's resources available. There's hope available. So to answer your question, what do I want people to get out of this? If there's young women out there of childbearing age and they want to conceive a child and they want to deliver and give birth to a child and raise a child, I'm telling you, in the state of Utah, the resources are phenomenal and they're only getting better. And as long as I'm on this earth, I'm going to continue to raise awareness and I'm going to continue to encourage people to improve resources for women and mothers. So people, women especially, have confidence that if they decide to have a baby, that there'll be resources available for them. I have daughters and I want grandchildren. And if they so choose to have children, I want them to be confident that if it happens, if they're the 1 in the 5 that happens to come down with postpartum anxiety, depression, or OCD, we'll get them help. We'll make sure that there's help. So that's the message: is have hope, have confidence. The system's better than it was 10 years ago, and it's only going to get better.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric. I appreciate you being on today. I love talking to you. You're a fantastic person. Thank you.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to reach out as well. As I hear Eric talking, I know, some people, I'll see some people out on the street. They'll say, "Hey, Dave, I really appreciate that you're telling your story. You're putting yourself out there." And for me, I thought, it's not about putting, myself out there. It's about just bringing to light the fact that mental health is normal, right? Mental health struggles are normal, right? The things we deal with, you're not the only person dealing with this. If you have these sorts of things, there are resources out there because all of us have some challenge or some other challenge that we're dealing with. I definitely want to know what you think, I should say. And so I would love for you to send me an email, Dave at navigatingabrokenvessel.com, Navigating a Broken Vessel on Facebook or on Instagram as well. And you're definitely welcome to go to our website to see all the episodes, navigatingabrokenvessel.com. Thanks so much for being on this episode. Definitely thank Eric for being here. Take care and have a great one.